Greetings, everyone. Welcome once again to the Outhouse podcast. I am your host, Ozzina Arcane. My friends call me Ozzy. With me once again is my friend Mad Matt.
The power of Voorhees compels you.
Yes, our resident Friday the 13th expert.
I
Also,
guess to a degree.
also Test Zero.
That's this franchise, right?
Yeah. What does Jason Voorhees say when he drops his machete? Oops, oops.
No, that's the sound of the machete hitting the ground. It's like
And last but not least, Ojunix.
That's all I got from this.
God, piercing my skull.
Oh, you're trying to do the music from? Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
the-
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
the horribly
this,
repetitive
This
tune.
is one of those. This is
Yeah.
certainly a movie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That wasn't even music. That was literally somebody threw a cat on a piano and just said, "Yeah, we'll take it."
That's a
They,
good one.
they threw a
Repeat.
synthesizer out of a plane and let it hit random birds while falling to the ground, and then went with it.
And yes, people, as you may have guessed, this movie has made us so irritable that everybody has started complaining before I even stated what movie we watched for the podcast. Although you'll obviously know if you're looking at the title, we watched Jason Goes to Hell, the 9th movie in the Friday the 13th series.
It's almost like even number 5. Don't get me wrong, 5 is really weak too, but at least it still feels like it's part of the franchise.
I guess that's where we should start, because now, in most cases where we do a terrible sequel, the plan will be to do a podcast beforehand talking about the good movies all in like one lump sum before we do the bad movie. But Friday the 13th is a series where I think
The
it'd be
movies
too...
are really kind of all the same.
Yeah, it'd be too repetitive if we tried to talk about all of them, because now each one has its own little thing that's different for the case of the story. The overall premise of every Friday the 13th movie is teenagers go to summer camp and fuck.
Literally.
The only different ones would be, well, not necessarily summer camp, but a group of assumedly teenagers or close to teenage age people go out to some campsite near Crystal Lake and the shenanigans.
Near at Crystal Lake.
They're almost all near or at Crystal Lake, except for I think it was 8 what goes to Manhattan.
It started at
Yeah,
Crystal.
okay.
It started at
And then-
Crystal Lake though, and then they went on a boat that went to Manhattan.
Yeah, they were on a boat. They started on a boat that was near Crystal Lake, and that went out
Yeah,
to Manhattan.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, like only the last third of the movie was actually in Manhattan.
Air quotes Manhattan. It was filmed in Canada.
At least you can say Jason X did take in space for the majority of the movie, where Jason Goes to Manhattan was only like the last third.
And I think 5 also wasn't at Crystal Lake. That was the one with
No,
Spoil-
that was actually a mental house near the Crystal Lake camping area.
Was 5
So it
the
was
other
still
one
near
with the
Crystal Lake.
possession?
5. No, there was no possession. 5 was the one where spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen it. It turns out that some guy was just pretending to be Jason because he was pissed at the people that were at this place where Tommy Jarvis, who had a previous encounter with Jason, was at.
Okay, so it's not quite possession, but it is somebody who's not actually Jason
Yeah.
doing the killing.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a fake. It was a fake Jason.
It was
So
like
that's kind of a segue into the premise of this movie.
Yeah, but before we really get going, I guess real quick, I don't think Ojunix or TZ will have much to add to this because you guys aren't as big of a fans of the series. But Matt, do you have a favorite movie from the series?
there's a few higher up ones, but my favorite still has to probably be Part 6.
Part
Just because
6.
it's a really well made one. It also was the first one to add the comedic elements, but do so without ruining the undertone of the horror.
Yeah, the previous ones, when there were comedic moments, it was kind of like unintentional comedy. Like I think it was number 2 where I remember there was the part where was number 2 the one that had the guy in a wheelchair?
Yes.
When he got killed and like he basically took a machete straight into the head, where I'm pretty sure if
In
you
the
got
face.
yeah, I'm pretty sure if it went directly into your skull like that, you'd be dead already. But he goes flying backwards, screaming, and then tumbles down a flight of stairs. I Because that scene was so over the top, I started cracking up because I'm like, he
Well,
wouldn't
if you
have.
also
He
if
wouldn't
you
have.
watch the clip really carefully towards the end, they had to cut it before it got too far because you'll see that the dummy in the wheelchair is about to launch out of the wheelchair as it's tumbling down the stairs.
Right, but I mean, just the fact that he would have already been dead, he wouldn't be screaming in pain.
I don't recall him screaming, but maybe he did the
I don't
first bit.
know. It's if there is like brain damage or something, you could probably be kind of stuck on
knee-jerk-
repeat, just kind of
yeah.
just doing
Broken
the
record
last
thing.
thing coming to your head, which would be just screaming in absolute terror.
But my favorite was actually 7, which is the one that had the psychic girl in it.
Fun
Bec-
fact, that was actually supposed to be Carrie, or I believe some other character like that, and they didn't have the budget to get the license, so they just
That
went
seems
to
to
Psychic
be a
Girl.
running theme with these later Jason
That's the
movies.
thing. That,
Oh, yeah.
that does seem. It's like I'm almost surprised Jason X didn't have a xenomorph show
But
up.
but I
They
did.
kind of did. They kind of had the xenomorph in this one.
But I just got a kick out of somebody with psychic powers tossing Jason around and him having a couple moments where you just kind of imagining him thinking, "Oh, this is what it feels like to get hit with supernatural attacks."
Even Jason realizes now.
Like
You have a few moments where Jason's like, "The hell?
he's like, "Oh,
How'd you
that
do that?
that's what that feels like. I'm an asshole."
Which,
That's what it feels like." Well, ow then.
but you know what? That's actually kind of a small degree of of enjoyment when even the killer kind of then realizes something when they're usually the silent type, aka Jason or Michael Myers.
Right.
Um,
But
you
Get-
know,
getting to the actual movie because I TZ Ojunix, neither of you had really watched the other movies a whole lot, right?
The
I
only one
watched-
that I've really seen is Jason X, which I enjoyed because I like the sci-fi element. I like how kind of goofy it is, and just that, like the best scene in that movie is the liquid nitrogen kill.
Oh yeah.
much like TZ, I haven't really watched any of them fully, except for the Manhattan one and and Jason X in space, which I would honestly say is also my personal favorite. Um, also probably the same. Also, the liquid nitrogen kill. I mean, a couple there also actually.
Huh.
If I had to say, my really funniest one is when they try to trick him with hologram girls.
Oh yeah,
He
the
was so bad.
hologram in the Crystal Lake.
And then he just proceeds to just keep beating themselves against the tree. And he's like, "Why won't they die?"
Yeah. Yeah, they just go up to him and it's like, "Do you want to have premarital sex? We love premarital sex."
Which honestly is that kind of dialogue is not that much more far-fetched than a dialogue actually in this movie. Which is funny because that was intended as satire.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Whereas this wasn't.
we've got that out of the way. Let's get to the actual movie we watched, which is
Do we have to?
which is
Watch any
unfortunately
better movies.
unfortunately, the movie starts out with this big scene where, like, I'm not going to try to summarize the movie. We're just going to go right into it because it's too weird to try and summarize it. You have to go through this
Actually-
shit bit by bit.
Do you want me to summarize it? Because I can summarize it pretty quickly if you want me to. I'm
Okay.
actually an expert at this because of another podcast I'm a part of.
Do it.
All right. So basically, long story short, the movie opens with a secret agent that's acting as a normal camper. She draws him into a trap where they blow him up. Upon the coroner examining the body, the heart starts beating again, and he seemingly is hypnotized by it? Question mark. And then proceeds to do one of the grossest things in the movie, which is to eat the frickin' heart of Jason. This
Probably one of the
possesses
only
him-
good effects in this.
possesses him by Jason, who then pursues to kill everyone around him that pisses him off, and is now seeking out a girl named Jessica. The reason why is because she and her mother, well, seeking out her mother first because she's closer, are also actually secretly Voorheeses. Her mother was Jason's sister, and that makes her niece, and she also has a baby daughter. Jessica's growing up with a guy named Steven, and Jessica's mother wants to talk to him about something when Duke comes around. Duke is a random guy that we've never seen before in the franchise, but somehow knows everything about Jason, including how to kill him. Um, Steven goes to go talk to Jessica's mother. She's attacked by one of the police officers who's now possessed by Jason. They manage to seemingly kill him, but he kills her in the process. Steven is to blame because he was caught with the body. Um, he manages to escape by bullying one of the at least good cops, but he has other things he's trying to pursue after he talks with Duke and realizes that Jessica can kill Jason. Has a brief encounter with his baby girl before continuing on to try and find Jessica by himself. Jessica, I'm trying to remember what all she goes through. She goes to the police office after actually Steven finds her, and because she doesn't believe him and freaks out. She gets at least properly dressed after that, but is then immediately attacked by Jason in her current boyfriend's skin because he's constantly hopping bodies throughout the movie at least 2 times. Manages to get away from him. He manages to hop in the body of the good cop that we saw from earlier, but it's left ambiguous until it happens. When he almost decides to hop bodies into the baby, he is stopped at the last minute by both Jessica pulling him back, but also Steven running in to smash him out the window. There's a free fight between the two of them outside, as Jessica finally gets the knife again to kill Voorhees. Why? We don't know. They don't really explain. It's just a power she has now. And she manages to stab Jason. There's a bit more fighting yet, and then she finally kicks the knife deeper, and Jason is finally shot into the earth by a beam from heaven and pulled in by giant monstrous hands that also almost get Steven for a moment. A few moments later, as the couple walks away and goes to retrieve their baby, which is also safe, we see the mask in the sand, sniffed at by a dog, but the dog then moves away. But seconds later is grabbed by Freddy Krueger's claw at the end.
Yep. I think there were a couple. I think there were a couple things you got slightly wrong, but we'll get to it when we go over the entire thing scene by scene. But yeah, that's basically
wrong. Maybe I just cut things.
I think you missed a thing, but it's okay. You're just trying to get the gist of what happened in the movie across.
I think I could even make that even shorter.
Yeah,
Jason gets blown up, turns into a worm, possesses bodies, gets a new body, and then gets killed and then gets stabbed by a knife. The end.
Yeah,
pretty much.
But
yeah, so
So obviously the movie starts out with this woman showing up at the.
Actually, now I remember the window didn't turn up in that.
Yeah, you kind of skipped over part of it. But the movie starts out with the whole thing with the woman going to the camp, and we know that it's a undercover agent of some kind, but the way they set it up, you think it's just some random camper going there, who then gets chased by Jason into a military ambush where they just come out and go, and just freaking unloading on him with machine guns. Mm-hmm. And they hit him with some kind of explosive, but I don't think we ever actually saw an explosive get shot or thrown at him. He just blows up all of a sudden.
It was an airdrop.
It was an
airdrop, yeah.
Okay. They didn't really do a good job of explaining that. But
which is kind of a common theme with this movie.
Yes, it is a very common thing.
Explaining anything in this.
That's one thing this movie very much has in common with the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Not explaining anything.
Explaining very little.
But
I honestly don't think we need to go through this scene by scene because we really did kind of recap, and it's really not a particularly in-depth story.
But there's parts I want to talk about. We're not going to cover everything. But like I thought it was like if you want to go with the storyline that people actually know Jason exists now, which in all the previous movies they kind of insisted most people don't know about him. Like he's like an urban legend. Maybe the people from Crystal Lake know about him, but everybody else is just
try to bury it.
And everybody else is from nearby have just heard about it. But in this movie, suddenly the entire country knows about him. because the feds were involved with this.
And it's on national news as they're talking him as a serial killer, which technically, yeah.
But it's so weird because I guess it kind of makes sense if you're gonna go with that plot line that yeah you could just you could just go instead of having people stumble upon him and get killed, set up an ambush and have a bunch of guys with high powered weapons take him down. Because we've seen from previous movies he's not completely invincible. He's just really really sturdy. I guess would you agree with that assessment, Matt?
I would agree with that, although he definitely became more sturdy after he became undead. But I believe they actually have a reasoning behind that they gave in Jason X.
Oh.
Apparently, he has a mutant healing factor. So he's actually never been dead.
Jason X-Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I do remember hearing that because in the original movie,
Jason X, Weapon X.
in the original movie, they implied that he drowned in the lake. But if you read like a lot of like lore dumps on Friday the 13th, supposedly the actual story, though they never stated this in the actual movies, is that he actually survived and just wandered off into the woods and started living in the woods and didn't know where his home was to go home, and his mother never came and found him. So she assumed he was dead.
Mm-hmm. I will also say that in the Friday the 13th remake, the only thing that's remade of the original movie is like the last 10 minutes. And in which case, we get a glimpse of young Jason watching as his mother is killed.
Right.
That's a complete switch, a complete reversal, where the mother is killed and the child survives.
Yeah. They kind of tried to do that a couple times because, the end of the first movie ends with what they decided was a hallucination of. I don't even remember what the main character's name was in the first movie, where she's in the boat and then the dead Jason body, kid jumps out of the water and grabs her. But that wasn't an actual thing that happened. That was a hallucination. And then one of the later movies, they did the old switcheroo where the corpse of his mom leaped out of the water and grabbed somebody.
Yeah, that was 3.
Like they made it look like they were we're gonna bring Pamela Voorhees back and have her be the killer for the next movie, but they didn't do that.
Nope, never happened.
They were actually.
So of course the town responds to this guy getting killed, and the only way that, in the most Guy Fawkes Day shit ever, is they're celebrating that the man is dead, so they do everything he hated.
Right.
They're selling 2-for-1 Jason burgers at the fucking diner.
Yeah,
It's like-
but I do want to talk before about that, about the autopsy scene, where this is all there's a scene where the what would that guy be called, the
Coroner.
the coroner is examining the body parts or whatever, and this is the point where they have the opening credits where, as we were making fun of at the beginning of the podcast, is the most fucking obnoxious music in the world. Where it's just
music.
It's just it cuts it shows some stuff, then cuts to the credits and that's it all over and over again. And the thing is,
The perfect timing from you two just happen to be doing it together.
and the thing is, it's not just during the opening credits. They use this music several times throughout the movie, and it's fucking annoying. Like at the beginning of a scene when it first kicks in, it doesn't click to me that it started playing, but then as I keep hearing it, I'm like, God, it's that fucking music again.
As a person who has self-taught themselves to play a keyboard, I can do better than this shit.
I was going to say that while we were watching it. I was thinking Matt can make better music than this, and he's not even a professional.
It's again, this is all related to the bad production of this entire movie.
This movie went through production hell. For those that aren't aware, New Line Cinema got the rights to use Jason Voorhees because they wanted to make Freddy versus Jason, and Wes Craven wasn't cooperating because he was in the middle of making New Nightmare. So they're like, well, we have the license. We have to do something with it. So they made this movie, and we'll talk more about what went wrong with the licensing issue as we get further into what was wrong with this movie.
So this is basically the Friday the 13th version of the bad X-Men or bad Fantastic Four or bad Spider-Man movies, where they had to make it or they lose the license.
Probably something like that, yes.
Yeah. The shame is just, unlike the Fantastic Four one, I wish this had been released to the public.
But yeah,
No, not that one. I'm talking about like Fan Four Stick.
And for stick, yeah.
Oh,
That
where
was
the
just shoved out to save them the copyright. Yeah.
yeah, let's use the slogan. It's clobbering time to be related to child abuse.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
I completely forgot about that.
That's a thing.
But back to the movie we're talking about.
That would be like if Jason's mother used the sh thing as like her like hushing him as a child, and they integrated that into the music.
You know, I almost would believe they would do that.
But back to this talking about this movie. Like, and before we were getting to this scene with the coroner, I made sure to tell everybody you better not be eating any red meat during this.
Oh yeah,
I was eating tomato soup at the time.
That was such a fucking gross moment when he did the whole.
Right, to its credit, it has a very good effect. Like,
Yeah.
you actually does look like this guy's eating this fucking hard.
Yeah,
I'm
So you
hoping
can see
that
where most of the budget
grotesque,
went in these
yeah.
into the movie into like 4 or 5 really good effects.
'Cause
And
it-
the rest of it, they have nothing.
but it wasn't just gross because of him just chomping down on this beating heart. But then the aftermath of it, where he's freaking making like retching noises as black ooze starts coming out of his mouth.
And he's like spinning around and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this weird demonic light spinning out of the body and into him. Yeah, it's just
Didn't you also
it's a whole slew of really good effects, but it's like ugh.
also PC mentioned that it sounded like they were using the T-Rex war from Jurassic Park.
No, they needed to put that in there. That would have been awesome.
But yeah, so then the guy gets possessed, and we find out that this is where they make a very big divergence from the rest of the series, where even the bounty hunter guy Duke later implies that Jason's been around so long because he just jumps from body to body, and it's like Jason's never been a body snatcher. That's never even been implied in any of the movies.
It's weird because it almost feels like they're trying to hedge their bets that they want. If they can't do a crossover with Nightmare, then they want to do a crossover with something. So they're kind of picking a little bit from everything here because you get like you get Halloween in here. You almost get a little bit of Alien. You get a bit of Evil Dead. You get a bit of like Body Snatchers or The Thing, where he's kind of like jumping into different bodies. So they kind of want to cross over with something. They're just not sure what.
Oh yeah, and I don't remember who pointed this out, but like I didn't catch this when I watched the movie previously, where it's almost a throwaway line where they say, "Oh, he was out past the Myers place."
Yeah, I caught that. I'm like, did they just say the Myers place?
Because I heard that too, and I think I was left flabbergasted because I couldn't comment immediately because I was like, they did not.
It could just be a coincidence.
Well, fun fact.
Myers is a last name.
Fun fact, there is some other references throughout the franchise to other horror movies. In particular, my favorite part 6, the one little girl at camp that actually gets lines, she's named after Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
The original surviving girl from the first Nightmare.
Right. And
She also survives that movie too, so
yeah.
congrats.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing is it seems like the ones that actually survive to be in more than one movie are the ones you actually remember the names of, unlike the ones that just die and then you never see them again.
Yeah.
Anyway, from where we left off.
But yeah, and then as like TZ pointed out, the whole town is celebrating, complete with. They were literally making burgers that look like hockey masks.
Which you eat it in a bun anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially if you get
Yeah.
it,
You'd have to
especially
serve it
if
without
you,
the bun on top,
especially
yeah.
if you get a cheeseburger, you wouldn't be able to see it. Like
Which is why they're selling them 2 for 1, because there's only half the meat in each of them.
Yeah.
but the thing is, what would have made a lot more sense, and and lots of restaurants do gimmicks like this, is would it been for them to have been pancakes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
waffles.
Well, usually what they do is they dip pancakes and they'd use whipped cream to make like the face shapes and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would have made a lot more sense than burgers.
Right.
But then again, the woman that's doing this, that's part of her big plan at her restaurant, and I can't even remember what her name was because she was
I
so.
didn't ever call out her name. She's
I remember.
kinda
I
called-
remember her husband's name was Pookie because I heard it repeatedly.
Yeah,
I just
heard
remember
that
she looked like
so
one of
often.
those women from the Far Side.
She does.
But she's the most obnoxious person in the movie by
Yeah.
far.
Which
But
also
not
makes
the
it
mo-
only
but-
more amusing when her jaw gets punched in.
And yet, she's not the one I would say was the most deserving of a death.
Oh yeah, that would have come to the asshole
We'll-
boyfriend who's
we'll-
also the newscasting guy.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
get to
we'll-
that
yeah.
in a little bit, but and that's when this is the point where Duke approaches Diana, who was the one that is actually Jason's sister, though they haven't admitted that yet at this point in the movie. He gets taken off to jail because I guess she's married to the sheriff, isn't she? Or
I think the sheriff has interest in her. I don't think they're actually a couple.
okay, but there was some kind of implication about that. That's another thing. Like we said, there's a lot of stuff in this they don't actually explain.
Pretty much.
It just happens. So he gets arrested, and then she starts talking to Steven, which is her ex-son-in-law, I guess, would
Yeah.
be correct.
Something to that effect, yeah.
And then it cuts, that's when it cuts from that to him just randomly driving along and gives some hitchhiking teenagers a ride to what used to be the campsite for Camp Crystal Lake. And this is where there's the one scene in the movie that is reminiscent of what you expect from a Friday the 13th movie, where the teenagers are out in the forest, they're acting dumb, and they end up getting slaughtered. But they even kind of made a joke about this because when Steven picks them up and they say where they want to go, he goes, "What are you planning on having premarital sex and getting slaughtered?"
And they're like, yeah, pretty much, except for the getting slaughtered part.
Yeah. They're like, actually, we're planning on having premarital sex and not getting slaughtered because Jason's dead now.
Which is like,
Yeah. Apparently, it's just like the Jason thing literally made teenagers too afraid to have premarital sex.
not premarital sex, but premarital sex within Crystal Lake. Because like you can't do that somewhere else, like, because they're like just celebrating the fact that he's dead. Which like okay, if he was this terrible serial
And
killer,
he's dead
all right. But I was just kind of reminded of all those people who like they heard COVID is over. It's like, oh great, let's all go out and have an orgy or something. What the it's not that COVID is over. It's like you just still need to be careful.
But
It's like it's just like it's like just I don't know.
And the thing is they've already established story wise that there was a news report that went out questioning whether or not he was really dead.
Yeah.
And these
So it's not
idiots
even definitive.
still went there, and they got killed. And here's the funny thing, and there's kind of a good reason for why this scene doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the context of the story, especially with these characters that have nothing to do with Steven getting a ride from Steven, and which is why he obviously has to decline joining them. This scene was made entirely because the execs looked at what they were making and they're like, what are you doing? Nothing that this series is known for is in here. There have to be teenagers that have sex and then get killed by Jason. That's the entire reason this scene existed in the movie.
That is just
It was
That
like,
is amazing.
it was an executive order to add it because like they didn't have any of the stuff that they're supposed to have.
which, considering what happens at the end of the movie, probably was also an exec order.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because the director was kind of just off his rockers on this whole thing.
Yeah. But
Again, we'll get to it later.
right, and that was when it goes. You can skim through some of this stuff kind of fast because it's not all that interesting to retalk, because Matt already kind of summarized it. But the currently possessed coroner goes and possesses a cop instead, where they had this really fucking awkward scene where he's got him
Strapped up.
strapped up in his underwear as he shaves him, because I guess Jason wants to make sure that his new body is going to be clean shaven.
There's a lot of weird, awkward, sort of sexual chemistry in the whoever Jason is possessing, because there's just weird shit going on in this movie.
Because of the fact that he leans in and that weird worm thing comes out of his mouth that goes into their mouth, and it's obviously if somebody doesn't know what's going on, it would look like they're French kissing or something weird like that, except this is obviously far more disgusting because
Because I pointed out the fact that, and you were kind of surprised that this is actually kind of has credence. I was pointing out the fact that he can't use mirror, so he's shaving himself before he transfers into his body.
Yeah, because that's another. Yeah, whenever he passes by a mirror or looks in a mirror, it just shows hockey mask Jason instead of the body that he's in.
Which is unfortunate, because I kind of like that idea. In the hands of a better director or a better filmmaker, that can actually be really creepy, where you look in a mirror and you see somebody completely different than who you're looking at.
Yeah, and it obviously would work more logically with something that's not Jason Voorhees.
Yes, there's not, the premise behind this movie is not terrible. It's just not a very good idea for a Jason movie.
Well, actually, I'm reading over the development for this movie, by the way, and actually the original script had a hell of a lot more sense already.
Oh yeah,
so
because
the original script was that basically for Jason Goes to Hell is that actually it was Jason's brother, who still had been retconned in out of nowhere, is the one that just digs up Jason's corpse and eats his heart, and then he goes on a killing spree.
That does make more sense.
It makes a lot more sense than the rest of this.
Yeah, and then the movie was also supposed to originally have Tommy Jarvis, who was from 4 to 6.
They didn't have the rights for him,
but
they
didn't
do it.
Yeah, they didn't have the rights for him, so who was supposed to be Tommy Jarvis became Steven.
And I would still argue that they split a part of Tommy off to make Steven, but they also took another chunk of him, which would have been the bounty hunter side of Tommy, and made him into Duke.
Right. Yeah, and so he possesses a new body, goes after Diana, gets stopped by Steven, but Diana ends up dying anyhow, and then he gets framed. And that's when Steven is in jail and ends up talking to Duke for the first time. Which we all admitted was actually one of the best scenes in the entire movie. It's just unfortunate that it was tied to this stupid plot line.
Again, it had another kind of creepy sexual vibe to it, where he's saying, "You need to pay something to me if I'm going to tell you this information." And it's like, and they're in jail as they're saying this. Like, what exactly do you want from this man?
Yeah, he goes, "Give me your hand," and he snaps his finger.
And in his mind, he's just going, "Oh, that's all you want."
Yeah, but at the same time, it shows how serious Duke is trying to be while being cryptic for some reason. But it's also trying to show Steven, is manning up, because the whole point of his story arc is he left Jessica.
Yes.
He left Jessica back when they were originally together, which, of course, she had a baby. They're his. And so now knowing that and seeing him doing this is showing him manning up. He's like, he's got to be a better person, and he's got to show he can stand up to who or whatever that is coming to try to kill her.
Although if this guy is trying to kill Jason, why is he hurting or asking for this sort of payment to break the fingers of a guy that supposedly will help him do that?
That's actually a good point. But I think they just wanted...
If he's willing to kill Jason, he would be trying to get as much help as possible, and you don't get help by breaking people's fingers.
They just,
for no other reason than they're much less capable of helping
I think
if they will anyway.
That's the problem, is they also were using this scene to build up Duke as an intimidating person because he hadn't had much screen time actually doing anything before this.
So
It
he's
was a good
intimidating to
scene,
the
but there's
completely
still
wrong
not a lot of
person.
logic.
Yeah. But in the general idea behind this whole scene is he explains that Diana was Jason's sister, which is a retcon because Jason was always an only child.
As far as we know up to this point, at least.
And Jason can't last in his possessed bodies that he's taking. He needs to possess another Voorhees so that he can become whole again. But also, only another Voorhees can truly kill him. And this is all just stuff that they made up. And there was literally no way for this bounty hunter to know any of that. It's not like Jason is some prophesized killer that's written in some ancient textbook.
No, that's not until the 10th movie that they basically start treating him that way.
It's almost like maybe there was some scene of maybe after so many times Jason's showed up, maybe he went and found Mama Voorhees' old journal or something to realize, how Jason works or something. But
Yeah, but that doesn't make any
So
sense.
they find the
'cause
Necronomicon instead.
But that doesn't
Yeah,
make any sense because oh god, we'll get to that later. But
I'm just derailing everything.
yeah,
Aren't I?
but
Yeah.
but because in the original movie, Pamela Voorhees doesn't know Jason's still around. She thinks he's dead. That's the reason she's killing everyone. So she wouldn't have a diary explaining how he's magically still around because that wouldn't make any sense.
considering all the retcons they've had in this movie, I wouldn't be surprised if that could have been a retcon
Like-
if they
like-
did.
Like Matt,
Again, why this movie doesn't attach to anything in the franchise.
Can you think of anything in the series, Matt, where they could make this make sense how he somehow knows this?
The only way would to actually have him be Tommy Jarvis, and he's been doing research like in between movies. That would be the only way they could possibly have made any kind of sense like that. But the fact is, he's definitely not Tommy Jarvis. Tommy Jarvis wouldn't be doing like half the stuff he's doing too.
Right. Like the only way I can
Don't get me wrong, Tommy Jarvis is a hard ass after everything he survived, but he wouldn't go around breaking people's fingers either.
the only way I can see this making sense is this guy is either himself or he went to a psychic who used a fucking crystal ball to find this information.
Yeah, it's very much like, where the hell did
Which,
you learn any
which
of this?
admittedly, if you think about it, that could have made this movie make more sense. Show him going to a fortune teller that tells him this shit while looking in a crystal ball. That could so easily explain away all the plot hole
Oh,
here.
you know what?
It would have been so stupid,
No.
though.
No, that's crazy. You know what? I just thought of a way you could do that because if you get the right people to be cast in it, you could basically recast like the same people that did a similar scene in Phantasm. Because there's actually a psychic with a crystal ball in Phantasm. Like have a grandmother and her young granddaughter doing that scene.
Are we really adding even more franchises into this to try to?
What the?
Why
fuck
not?
Why
Or
not?
you are.
Why not? It's the multiverse of horror.
I
The
mean,
multiverse of madness.
I mean, Mortal Kombat more or less has made it a legit thing now.
So yeah, but oh my god, it's so hard to keep on track while talking about this movie because it's so bad.
Because we literally have to talk about other things just to get this going.
Well, like I'm sitting here trying to think how can you make this make sense? There has to be some way to try and make this make sense because they don't
I
explain
think
it.
we're putting way more effort into it than the filmmakers
Yeah,
did
you're
trying to
putting
make
more
this
effort
make
into it than the
sense.
filmmakers did. You do realize that these filmmakers, by the way, were all the college kids. The only way they got in is because they were close friends to Sean Cunningham's son.
Oh,
Yes.
that explains a lot.
Yes.
Damn.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this movie is the Rings of Power of the Jason franchise?
I'm going to say that there was a lot of nepotism. A lot of nepotism.
I'm honestly trying to say which is worse.
But I I'm trying. I've derailed myself. I'm trying to think where we're supposed to go next. In the
And honestly, the Rings of Power guys weren't in just college. They
Well,
apparently had some
yeah,
fucking.
they've been around for a while, but I'm just putting some
I
completely talentless people somehow getting in charge of making something.
let's okay. Since we were at the prison, how about we just skip to the whole fact? He escapes, and then just knows where
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
Voorhees house
yeah.
is.
That's right. He gets to the Voorhees house. That's the important part because that's where he's hiding in a closet, and we find out that this crazy son of a bitch that was dating Jessica. That's also the news guy who's been talking about the Voorhees stories in the news segments. Turns out he stole Diana's corpse from
The morgue.
from the morgue and brought it to the Voorhees house, all for the intention of making like some great news piece where they find her corpse in the Voorhees house because he's gonna tell him to go search the Voorhees house and it would just happen to be there. And but he has this awful line where he's talking to a guy on the phone and he explains that he stole her corpse and then fucked her daughter in the same day.
Which is just 10 levels of what the fuck.
It's like congratulations. You've made it so Jason isn't the worst person in this movie.
I was gonna say, in this situation, Jason's the hero.
But yeah, it's one of those situations. Like, people joke about the fact that they're always making these really bad slasher movies where you want to see the slasher kill these people. Which, I mean, there's a certain craft to that. Like, you look at something like the Final Destination movies, where the spectacular kills, really are part of the appeal. But then you have that old thing. It's like, well, I hate all these characters and I want them to die. That's really in the sense that they make the characters very not likable. They're just kind of boring or dumb characters. Where it has this character, they actively make him reprehensible.
Right.
Make him reprehensible, and then within minutes have him get taken over.
The only character I can think of to kind of compare him to from another horror related franchise is the guy that was in Aliens that was working for the corporation they wanted the alien. They didn't care about all the people that died and everything.
Yeah, Wayland Yutani, yeah.
Which
Yeah,
there
I
always
can't
seems to be a
remember his
character like that in these movies. Like, that's the thing. We want this guy to survive. We want to be able to capture him and study him.
Right. But that guy also was one of the ones where you find out how terrible he is and then he dies. That's like
Yeah.
that's fitting
That's the thing.
because I don't
This
want him
movie
on screen
doesn't
anymore.
Give anybody kind of time to understand whatever these characters are,
because
they don't have any time to develop these characters. What little there is of the characters to begin with.
The guy walks in, has to immediately dump what a terrible piece of shit he is, so that you feel good about him getting killed in a second.
Yep.
And they had to make it so bad so that we immediately hate him in just a tiny bit of time that we have to get to know him.
And that way, when the door slams open, we immediately see the latest possessed guy. We just go, yay!
If I enough, I think he was also the longest possessed body of the bunch. For the whole
For the
movie.
later half of the movie, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And he takes a lot of damage, which I think was also just kind of karma.
Clearly, when he gets shot and all that black stuff comes out, that's the flex sealing the hole up. Because he took a lot of
Yeah,
damage.
because like whenever the guy
Damage.
that's possessed by Jason is bleeding black, they're bleeding black. Which again, going into the whole thing, the whole connections to the thing, you have people possessing bodies, and their blood is what gives it away.
But yeah, so he gets possessed. And then the guy that had previously been possessed apparently actually regains control of his body just to die in agony as he melts.
Yeah.
Which I will give it. It's disturbing and hard to watch. That was actually a pretty good effect.
Yeah, there are a couple of really good effects in this. You have the girl getting split in half, and then she gets killed by Jason.
The heart eating and the melting man.
Yeah, the eating the hat, eating the heart, the melting guy. Then you have like the xenomorph Jason coming out of the body at the end.
Right.
The neck hugger, neck burster.
Yeah, but oh my god. So then the current boyfriend, possessed by Jason, goes after Jessica. Steven shows up to help her, He basically saves her, but she doesn't want to believe him, and thinks that he's just crazy and just killed the guy.
Yeah.
But of course, then one thing leads to another, and he shows up at the police station because he chased her there.
And kills pretty much almost all the
Pretty
cops.
much kills every cop in there, and after taking a bunch of bullet hits, including one through the head, which that was funny when they go up to him and they can see that he's been shot through the head, and like, somebody call an ambulance. He's been shot in the head. What do you mean call an ambulance?
I think I was the one who called that out.
Yeah, you were, but I just had to point that out as just another stupid thing in this movie.
Honestly, it depends on how much damage is done, but usually I would think that the exit wound in particular for a bullet going through the head is usually going to do the most damage and will
Yeah.
probably kill somebody.
But at this point is where the movie kind of just becomes nonstop carnage from
Yeah.
like scene to scene, where
Yeah,
there's
'cause
not there's not a lot you can talk about because you can't go over every single
Death.
death and thing that happened. But basically, it goes from carnage at the police station to carnage at the diner to just the final scene where they're at the Voorhees house now because Duke lured them there with Jessica's baby to try and put an end to Jason once and for all.
The baby.
Where then the sheriff shows up, looks like he's had the shit kicked out of him. You assume that he's possessed because he's got blood coming out of his nose. But then the other cop comes in and is actually talking, and he's the guy that's possessed by Jason, even though Jason's never talked in the entirety of the entire series.
On all the previous forums, he didn't say a word except like grunts and wars.
Yeah. He's never spoken clear sentences, but this time he does to trick her. And it's like,
Yeah,
that's just so weird of a decision to have happen.
So yeah, the cop that is actually not possessed, Jessica killed an innocent man.
Like the only
Oh, that'd be
time,
like the third one that she did, wasn't it? Or was that no? There was a couple of the other ones. Never mind.
but the only time I can think of where Jason had talked in the series previously was at the end of 8 when he was about to get completely covered in toxic waste, and he said,
Or
he
his
said,
child, was
yeah.
basically child voice and voice for going mommy.
yeah, that's the only time he's talked in the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to actually just switch things up and have him actually be devious and fake being a normal person, it's like
It's very easy to forget that Jason is actually in this movie because none of these characters really they are supposedly possessed by Jason, but they don't really have any of his mannerisms. They don't exude any sort of Jason presence. They're just some random killer in this case.
Yeah.
I mean,
So they're not like acting like Jason, however, how I don't know how exactly you would do that. They don't kind of do the stalking walk or anything, but it's very easy to forget that Jason is in this movie because there is so little of it.
I think you put it best, where it feels like this could have been an interesting movie if it wasn't about Jason.
Also, I just realized something. Remember something, because one of Jason's iconic weapons is the machete. Remember, there was a machete in the diner. We even see that. I think
Yeah.
it was
Steven took it.
Steven.
Steven
Yeah.
loves it, yeah.
And I kept thinking, okay, I guess Jason's going to take that away from him and use it. I think after Steven used it once, the machete just disappears and is never seen again.
I think you're right.
So Jason never even got to use it.
No.
When you thought you would think it was like gonna be like the Chekhov's gun. Jason's going to get it.
He
Chekhov's
had
machete.
He never does.
he had a machete at the beginning before he got blown up, but he never
Yeah.
successfully hit anybody with it.
No, and then so you see a machete in the diner. He's like, "Oh, Jason's gonna get that by the end. You just know it." He never does because
No.
the only weapon you see him use is the freaking stick that was attached to the rake.
Yeah, there was a rake. There was a rake that Steven hit him in the chest with, and he broke the top of it off. But this also happens where the. So the thing is, Steven shows up to save Jessica and the baby, and cuts the head off of the body Jason currently has possessed with the machete, which leads to the weird thing where the head just kind of pushes out of the way, and this weird chest burster looking monster thing comes out of his neck, and then goes into the basement, and that's where Steven says, you know the thing you said about him possessing a Voorhees woman? And Duke's like, yeah. He goes, does it have to be one that's alive? Because Diana's in the basement,
Yeah, her corpse.
her
Yeah.
corpse, and the thing goes right in between her legs to possess her.
Yeah.
And then you hear growling
Describing this
noises.
movie just sounds
It's-
so fucking
it-
stupid.
Like it was already bad enough. It's like, did you really have to do that?
It's. I'm sure someone would make the joke. Well, he's too big to go in her mouth now. I'm like, that's not the fucking point.
That's not the
And
point.
the thing is, it's a disturbing enough idea, but the way it's presented in the movie is just so goofy, it's impossible to take it seriously enough to actually be disturbed by it. It just comes off as juvenile.
It's just
It
one of
really
those
is.
things. It's just
Yeah.
one of those things where you're like, did they really just fucking do that?
I wonder if this is where the fetish unbirth came from.
No, that's way
No,
older than
human
this.
beings are just twisted.
Okay, well, either way, it's. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then
If you want to see that, watch American Gods.
And then the thing that's so weird is so you're thinking now a possessed Diana's going to come up from the basement, but no, it's just magically a reformed Jason, complete with the hockey mask.
Yes.
hockey
Is it-
mask
is-
and
Like I
clothes.
said, you
So-
just
so-
needed
so-
any Voorhees.
So Diana's feminine body just suddenly just steroid up, and a hockey mask rode out his skull, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah, because he's got the hockey mask, but he's also got the clothes. But they're also like already kind of perfectly tattered and burnt and beat up and everything. And he's got all the weird growths and stuff
Like-
on his skin.
like-
So he comes out perfectly formed as a malformed beast.
Like it would have made what would have made it more interesting is if when he came out, he looked more like he did in like one of the older movies where like he was more fresh, I guess you would say.
Yeah, freshly
Yeah, that
freshly
would have
corpse.
actually been a better idea. Yeah, actually,
'cause-
if he looked more like he did at the beginning of like Jason X.
Well, no, here they only had, I guess here they only had a chance to design one costume for Jason, so they just kind of had to use it in
Apparently.
every shot.
So they had to use
Yeah.
the worst looking Jason costume in the history of the series.
Yeah, I was gonna say, of all the Jason looks, the NES one tops this one.
That could be why he only
honestly,
appears in
the,
like 2 scenes in the movie.
Honestly, the more recent video game did a better job of making this version of Jason look better. They even have a demasked version of it.
I don't even think I even want to know what it looks like.
Half of his face is a skeleton.
Huh.
There
Okay,
you
then
go.
maybe that actually would work.
Yeah, he's like I said before, he's basically supposedly some sort of mutant by Jason X, and I would assume the mask is kind of like
Like a
forced
skull.
into his face. So yeah,
But
Yeah, anyway,
at some point during all this brawling, Duke gets killed, and then eventually Jessica actually stabs the freaking dagger into his chest, like you guys, Matt explained earlier. Some more fighting happens, and then it gets
At
kicked.
first,
To
this
the,
dagger comes out of nowhere. It just kind of forms from
Right.
another blade that
Yeah.
she has in her hand.
which is also something from another franchise.
yeah, which
Yes, the knife is from Evil Dead.
no, the knife is not an Evil Dead knife. I know that keeps being said. That's not it.
Uh-oh.
I can
But-
actually show you the Evil Dead knife.
But the thing is, they did at one point just randomly have the Necronomicon sitting on a table.
Yes.
Yeah, literally borrowed from the from the set.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if they should have just shot this in the Evil Dead cabin, because the design of this house, this really could have been a lot creepier. The fact that you get to see inside the Voorhees house, what is that going to look? It just looks like any house. It's really fucking boring in there. That was really kind of disappointing. If I had to just pick something randomly, like what would make we have a small budget, just what are we going to turn the Voorhees house into? Cover the walls with crucifixes.
Also, I didn't even click with me that the fact that the Voorhees knife literally looked like a normal knife, but then the second Jessica gets her hands on it, it just transforms
Yeah.
into.
Yeah.
It basically turned into a magical.
Knife.
It turned into a
Because
magical
she's the
dagger.
magical Voorhees that can kill him, I guess.
Which is like, where did that come from?
Also, there's another thing. It's just like, how did Duke get it?
Two.
Yeah, this movie makes no fucking sense. This movie is
it makes
really
no
fucking
sense.
bad.
It's kind of weird. It's like you don't want so much exposition in the movie, and yet you have a movie with so little exposition that you actually need it.
Yeah, it's
I don't
just,
think exposition would have helped, honestly. They would have been grasping at so many straws to make any of this make sense. It would not have helped.
no.
They would have
Does
realized that their story is shit to begin with.
it does, if you look very closely, resemble some bits of the Evil Dead knife, but is definitely not the same.
Okay, well, I mean, it looks somewhat close. You
It
can.
looks like the gun from Existence.
Yeah.
So yeah, major fight. They Jessica stabs
Pretty,
Jason.
pretty much everybody except for Steven, Jessica, and the baby are dead by the end of the
Rock's
movie.
fall, everybody dies.
Like the whole fucking town basically gets massacred in this movie.
Well, time to
Well,
move.
everyone
Time
that's
to
at
move
least on,
away.
at least everyone that's on the picture, yeah.
Everybody that was in the diner when he showed up after chasing Jessica there is dead. Including one guy that wasn't actually killed by Jason. He got shot by stray buckshot from someone else shooting at Jason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just kind of
there's
in
at
the
least one or
background
two
in
of
one of the
those,
shots.
yeah.
The guy dies.
I think there was somebody else that also was there, and they got.
I think Jason killed that one, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
he ran up to
background civilian
Jason
just
like
ran
he
up
was.
and just got
Yeah,
murdered.
he ran up to Jason like he was gonna try to stop him, but then he didn't actually do anything, and Jason just kind of like chucked him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Oh, movie so bad. Yeah, and just the final thing is after Jason gets sucked down to hell, his mask is left behind, and then Freddy's hand comes up and grabs it, and then there's
which-
laughter that's clearly not actually Freddy's laughter because apparently they couldn't have been arsed.
Yeah, they couldn't ADR it. They couldn't find somebody who kind of sounded like to try to mimic his laughter. They couldn't have found like stock audio to dub in. Like, no, it's just a laugh, somebody laughing as the glove comes up. I'm surprised they were able to get the glove.
Well, they own the rights to
probably had to-
Nightmare.
Yeah, they got the rights to that, but they couldn't get the rights to the laugh track or anything. Any of the audio.
Yeah, I don't know
If-
why
if-
they
if-
didn't
if-
get a better audio. And as for the knife and the knife glove, I'm pretty sure they just had the leftover prop that they used.
If it isn't clear, just between the production hell problems, the budget restraints, and just the director being off his high horse, and the clear indication of just we want this movie done with. We don't give a crap anymore.
Yeah, pretty
End
much.
it.
This movie was just made so they didn't lose the license. They didn't. So it's very much like Fan Four Stick in that sense.
Yeah. So I mean, we might as well go around. Matt, you got any final thoughts on this?
This is how do I put this?
Terrible?
I hate some of the other Friday movies for other reasons, but I will say that this one genuinely feels like the least attached to anything the rest of the franchise ever did. It's easily swept aside, forgotten, and never watched again.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have rewatched it myself if we weren't doing this.
This will be like my third time through it. Ugh.
I was gonna say you were like sounding very regretful. It was like, oh god, I have to watch it
Yeah,
again now.
yeah. When I got when I got the page open for us to watch, and I saw that Amazon Prime watch again button, I was just like, why the fuck am I doing this to myself?
Why does it have to say again?
Why do I have to say it again? Why are you reminding me I'm stupid enough to watch this more than once? Easy, you got any final thoughts?
It's certainly an interesting time to have seen another Friday the 13th movie. We should have been recording this last week when it was actually Friday the 13th, but no, I absolutely agree. This movie was really pretty dumb, and I have like virtually no attachment to the series so I can't imagine how much of a betrayal this would have felt if you had been fans of the for people that were fans of the previous
Well,
8
Kevin-
films. But
Oh yeah.
I feel like
Kevin-
after the 8th movie, you kind of have a sense of diminishing returns to begin with. So probably after the 5th one, you kind of realize these are kind of going to be going downhill.
Oh, Kevin would know how much of a betrayal it is. He's seen Jason Goes to Manhattan.
And you know what?
Yeah, which is better, this or Jason Goes to Manhattan? Jason Takes Manhattan.
Jason Takes Manhattan by about
Freaking
By
country
a
mile.
Manhattan yard.
at least a few football fields.
By the size of Central Park.
So
Because I'm sorry, it's
That's
still
enough.
because even I thought Manhattan was. I mean, it had its horror moments, but it still had a lot of humorous moments, especially with the one African actor with the whole just beating the
Oh,
crap out of Jason on top of the rooftop, which I just like. This is ridiculous.
yeah,
And I
by
was
the
seeing
way,
that.
that actually hurt Kane Hodder that going through that because he had to have the mask padded and it still didn't pad it enough.
true.
It still hurt to get punched that hard.
And still, you know what? I can at least say I think I still was more entertained watching that than I seen this just the one time I've ever seen it, and I'm like, yep, not doing that again.
By the
So
way, have I mentioned that
I-
I know a few New Yorkers and I have heard their reaction to the toxic waste washing out the sewers, to which the reaction is, the fuck?
I kind of figured that wasn't accurate to real life when I
Yeah.
saw that in the movie. I was like, I don't think any sewage system in the U.S. has toxic waste go through it.
Toxic waste is generally not even like that. Toxic waste is usually just used radiation suits and gloves. That's
Um,
that's what's actually in toxic waste barrels.
so
That's-
aside from thinking that Manhattan was better, do you have anything else to add, Ojunix? Or is that pretty much your final thought?
I think Jason going to space was a godsend for him.
Yeah, probably.
Well, first you have to go down, then you get to go up.
Because right now, because right now I think Jason on Planet X would be a better sequel now.
So yeah, so my final thoughts is I'm not the biggest Friday the 13th fan, but back around October, because I'd gotten into playing Dead by Daylight because of Wesker from Resident Evil, I kind of got into watching some horror movies just so I could understand the lore behind all these characters. So I marathoned 1 through 8 because I got them cheap on a digital video sale, and then I rented this, which means I've rented this movie twice now, and I hate myself for doing that.
We appreciate the sacrifice.
But I which Unix remembers, I had just watched 1 through 8, and I hated this movie so much that I dragged him into a Discord call to bitch to him about how fucking stupid the movie was for a full hour by myself while he just listened to me complaining about everything in the movie that made no sense.
And is that what inspired you to want to do this podcast to begin with, just as a series?
Not really. I think that more I just
You
So-
want an outlet.
watching podcasts that I actually like watching Triple KO, listening to Matt McMuscles and Maximilian Dude talking about like bad video games, and then when they started talking about bad video game movies and the bad video game cartoons, it just that and the Red Letter Media stuff kind of made me go, I want to just do a podcast with my friends where we watch shitty movies and then talk about it, because it'd be more interesting than just doing a review of the movie. I think, anyhow.
Um,
But yeah, you remember that, right, Ogunix? Me talking your ear off?
I do. I think after you were done, I was like, I need a few moments alone. I walked away, and they came back. It's like, okay, I feel better.
It's just this movie was just this bad, and
Because I was like, wow.
I admit this probably isn't the worst movie we're ever gonna watch, but it's probably one of the biggest betrayals because of the fact that it's a sequel to something and it's this bad.
The sequel after it was so much better.
Yeah, that's
Like you
the
said,
bigger betrayal. Is that
and-
the almost more comical sequel after this was
and
a
the fu-
better
and-
direct sequel.
And the funny thing is, with the sequel, was almost kind of being satire. And a lot of people would say that was a betrayal, and yet I still find that more respectful than what this did.
And I think that's one of the other problems with this movie. One of the other problems with this movie is it has zero intentional humor.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah,
even
it is a very dour movie. It is a very
Yeah.
depressing movie
because
to kind of try to
even
watch.
even the earliest Friday the 13th at least had some moments of levity or humor. This is just nonstop. Jason's on the loose, and we got to do something about it.
Jason's on loose. We gotta do something about it. Everyone in this town's a prick,
Like at least even in the first
except
movie,
for like 3 people who also get killed.
even in like the first movie, you can get some enjoyment out of like Ralph showing up and being like, "You're all doomed, doomed, I tell you."
This camp's got a death curse.
Like it's kind of foreboding, but it's also funny because it's just this crazy old man on a bicycle.
Yeah, every time he hops on that bike, my brain instantly goes Wicked Witch of the West.
You just going that's better music than what was in this movie. The thing is, I think when I watched this originally, I was just so confused by how irrational and stupid the storyline was that I didn't even notice how bad the music was until we rewatched it.
Then suddenly it just
And-
assaulted your senses. You're just like, oh god, make it stop.
Yeah, because it's like I've already seen this scene. I know it's going to happen. I don't have to pay too much attention. Oh God, what's this noise in the background?
Yeah, that's what happens after you understand the scenes and the things that you can notice all the other bad stuff in the background.
Oh, but anyhow, I think we're more or less done. Matt, where can everybody find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on YouTube at MadMattInc1 if you're either searching for a URL or just MadMatt. You can find me on live streaming at Twitch on MadMatt2185, or you can also find me on Twitter at MadMattInc.
TZ, I know you're not much of a content creator anymore, but you got any social medias or anything you want to plug?
You can find me at on Twitter, test_0, and you can find me on my website, test0.net.
And you can find Ojunix at Ojunix at Twitter.
Pretty much.
You actually had
Yep.
an original enough name. You didn't have to put any numbers after it.
No, because strangely enough, my name is pretty original, I guess.
And I don't think I really need to advertise my stuff because you're going to be watching this on my YouTube channel most likely. But you can find me on Twitter at Ozzina Arcane. Until next time, everybody, pray for our souls for the next shitty movie. Have a good one.
Nice one.
Yo.
Podcast goes to hell.
Oh God.
Too late. Already there.